Welcome. My name is Lou Paulson. I have the honor of being the International Commissioner for the Boy Scouts of America. Today, we are reintroducing our Campfire Talks that we started last year. This session, we are exploring how Scouting is responding to the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War. But before we start with our panel discussion, I'd like to take a moment to thank a few individuals. First, I'd like to thank our production team of Emily Hale and Reese Kilby. I'd also like to thank Phil Krachek, Vice President of Promotions of Scouts, and Marcia Bedich, who is chairing our Messengers of Peace program here in the BSA. Finally, I'd like to thank the National Scout organizations who provided members for this panel, also the panelists themselves, the World Scout Committee, and our host, Dr. Wayne Davis, in helping putting this together. We all know that a Scout is helpful, and one of the largest programs to be helpful in the world is the Messengers of Peace program. Today, we want to explore how Scouting is helping the refugee crisis based on the armed military conflict that is going on in Ukraine. So we asked a few Scouts and members of the World Committee to come on and tell us firsthand how Scouting is impacting this refugee crisis. So let me step away and turn it over to the moderator of our panel, Dr. Wayne Davis. Doctor?
Thank you so much, Lou. Really appreciate you. I'm very happy to be here with Radu and Nika. I will ask them to introduce themselves. So Nika, Radu, can we start with you, Nika? Please tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to join this conversation. My name is Nika Gorovska. I'm a member of the World Scout Committee, and I am from Ukraine. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Radu, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Hello, everybody. My name is Radu Pindic. I'm from Romania. I'm 20 years old, and I've been a Scout for about 5 years now.
Fantastic. Can you both tell me a little bit about Scouting within your countries? Nika, I recognize that you are in the World Scout Committee, but if you could just give us a background information on Scouting within Ukraine and within Romania, Radu.
Yeah, sure. So in Ukraine, Scouting has got quite a complicated history, as you might know, because of the Soviet Union. Some Scouting activities in general were banned for that period of time. And then after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990s, it started rebuilding itself. So the movement had its good and bad moments. And now we are in another bad moment, and we are all hoping that it will soon end. But nevertheless, Scouts are still that driving force in the community to help and to support others.
Absolutely. Radu?
Regarding the Soviet regime, we've kind of had a similar situation. So ever since the communist regime fell here in 1989, Scouting took action, and it has been around since 1990, and it has since become the greatest movement for young people in the country, with over 6,500 members.
That's really interesting, and I think we have that in common amongst the three of us, because I did most of my Scouting in Ethiopia and East Africa, and Ethiopia started Scouting over 100 years ago, but it was disbanded in 1974, and they did not have Scouting from 74 till mid-90s because Ethiopia decided to become a communist country. Not part of the Soviet Union, but very much similar to the Soviet Union. So as a socialist country, they had disbanded Scouting. And in 1995, it's kind of restarted again. And today, I think we have over 130,000 Scouts at the national level in Ethiopia. So it's very interesting how Scouting survived in all our countries over those years through communism, through the difficulties of, banning people from gathering, from following those 3 values that we have. So it's very interesting. But coming back to the point we're discussing today, Nika, can you tell us how the situation is in your country? How's the situation right now?
Well, that's a difficult question. It's getting better in some areas, I guess. That would be my honest answer, especially around the capital, around Kiev. It is still challenging, very dangerous. In some cities, the situation is worse, is critical, and people are with no electricity, no water, no gas, no heat. To some cities, it is still impossible to evacuate people as they are under attack. In some cities, it is more or less calm, but again, it's not safe to be far from home if you are in that city. There is also curfew, there is no public transport working, so it is quite challenging. Obviously, scouting activities also stopped, and scouts switched from being, messengers of peace, being in their scout camps, scout groups, doing usual scouting. They switched into this emergency crisis role, helping the community with their humanitarian efforts. So a lot of scout centers switched to be shelters. So a lot of things have changed. But I guess by now I can say that the society has adapted to this new life. And again, we are still very hopeful that it will be soon, as soon as possible. We will be over as soon as possible, and we all keep praying for peace.
Yeah, Nika, see, I know we as scouts are resilient. We thrive in difficult circumstances. It is part of our oath, part of our laws that we do our best. But when you take it to the personal level, how has this affected your scouting group or friends in terms of their personal standing, be it in terms of mental health, the physical circumstances, despite what they're doing, despite all the great work that they're doing, how is it affecting them?
Yeah, obviously it's a very difficult situation for emotionally, mentally, physically as well, morally. So obviously the mental health of young people, even of adults, is at stake here. Again, depending on the situation, it is different. Some people are suffering more, some people are more or less safe. And yes, scouts are trying to support to the best extent possible. I know personally my scout group from where I am from, some other scout groups in safer parts of Ukraine, they keep running online activities, they keep running online meetings, just to lift the spirits, not only of young people, but also of their parents, just to help them, to help their families through this experience. And that is what is very important, this psychological support, especially, because definitely it's not something very easy. And again, you cannot really imagine this situation before being in such a situation yourself. So movies or books or what you can see, what you can hear from people is not the same from being there. So definitely I can see in all my friends with whom I'm in touch that the situation, the crisis, the war has really impacted every individual there.
Yeah, and you see, taking it to Radu, I know the fog of war does not affect only the impact area or the countries in conflict, but all countries around them. I mean, this one is affecting the entire world, but more so with Romania, with your country. How is it really affecting your community, your scouts, your country? Can you share?
Well, we were naturally shocked in the first place and very confused as to what were the implications and what was going to happen. But this being the situation, we didn't hesitate to help, and we gathered the young people who could get involved and offered our help where we could. Personally, I tried motivating the scouts of my local group as I saw a lack of organization, because at the time I was in the capital city, about 300 kilometers away from where my local group is, as that's where I live. and talk to them about the responsibilities we have to help those in need, and also the joy it brings both to those who receive the help and to those who offer it, because these are some values I stand by. And when I try to incite people to do actions for others, I first tell them that it's a very fulfilling experience for the person who offers their time and help too, not only for those who receive it.
So talking about the younger people, how do you talk to them? How do you address it? How do you bring it to their attention?
Well, we met. I called a meeting with everybody, and some of them came, some of them didn't. And I personally tried to get involved as much as I could, and went at the border and did some volunteering myself as time allowed me. And I shared some of those experiences with them, maybe thinking that those would be motivating enough for them to get involved as well.
Nika, do you have a strategy? Does Scouting in Ukraine, or you personally, have a strategy on addressing this difficult topic with young people, especially our cubs I'm talking about? How are you addressing it with them? How do you talk to them?
That's a very good question, because as Scouts, we're definitely learning by doing. We are prepared, but obviously there are situations from which you learn, and this one is one of those. Obviously now the situation is like that every Cub Scout, every Scout, well, at the beginning, they kept asking questions. So they were the ones bringing this into the conversation. But as you again might know, the tensions have been around for quite a while, since autumn last year for sure. So it really depended on the region where the Scout groups are. Some Scout groups addressed this and had this conversation back then. Again, leaders, as Dialogue for Peace, right? This discussion about peace, about dialogue, about the situation in the country, active citizenship as part of the youth program. Some leaders used this opportunity to bring it up. Some of them didn't. Again, it really depended, you know, parents are also involved in most cases. They are consulted as well. If this is something that they would love to their children to discuss in the Scout group, because again, back then we had some polarized opinions in the country, because again, half of the population, let's say, wasn't really into thinking that something really bad might happen. Some of the population, some part of the population was into thinking that, yeah, let's better prepare and discuss it. So it was quite polarized and quite difficult. And I think that this is also a major learning for Ukrainian Scouts, but not only, also for other NSOs, for World Scouting as a whole as well.
Yes. And you see, when we talk about addressing these issues, it's not a one-day thing. It is a lifelong thing, because the impact will be felt for many, many years to come. So it is something you have started now, which is great. And the same with Radu, you know, calling the meetings, gathering your youth and talking to them about the situation. It's very important, but it's something that needs to continue. I do recommend that. Radu, I know your country is very much involved with the support of refugees and those affected in the crisis. What are Scouts, and what is your group doing to help Scouts in that aspect, and refugees in that aspect?
There we go. Well, in the first place, I saw a very hasty response from the national organization. They right away formed a group that was to deal with this situation, offering support to all the local groups with all the resources they needed, from financial to emotional. I have some data if you want to hear it.
Yes.
Like, they put together list of what we did to help, and I have them here. So there have been over 300 scouts who offered their time and help to the Ukraine crisis, over 530 refugees transported to their destinations, like train stations, airports, or their accommodation, more than 750 people accommodated in our scouts' homes, 12 transports of resources like food, clothes, medicine, and such items, and over 12 organized donation points scattered throughout the country. Not to mention all the help our scouts provided the people at the borders. As for what my local group did, we received rented car for transport from the NSO and $2,000 worth of expenses for whatever we needed to fulfill our mission. And with said car, we transported the volunteers, not only scouts, we took whoever wanted to come to the border and help with the sorting of donations and loading them into trucks or unloading them from the trucks that came there. And also at the border, some of us went there and had night shifts waiting for the ferries to come with people and offer them the resources that were already there for them.
Wow. Basically, you know, we say in our law, a scout is a friend to all, brother or sister to all scouts. And I think your group and your association has done an amazing job. One thing I want to follow up with Radu is, how are you tracking the service hours that you're giving, the amount of work that you're doing? I mean, supporting people in their hour of need is very important, and also telling that story so that other scouts can be part of such wonderful work would be good. So how are you tracking the service hours that you're giving?
Every local group that got involved had to designate one person to keep in touch with the national organization and offer data, I don't know, pictures, everything that someone at the higher level put together, and used that information to get a grasp on what was going on.
Yeah. I think it's very important to kind of synchronize every work that we do through our national organizations through the right channels, instead of everybody running to do something, because sometimes if you have the channel, you do better, you do a more impactful work. Nika, let me come back to you. I know we know recently WOSM launched a fundraising campaign for Ukrainian scouts, and WOSM has been working with other partners like the UNICEF as well in supporting those affected, especially the refugees and the youth. So can you speak a bit about those efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, yeah, as you mentioned, World Scouting, supported by the World Scout Foundation, also in cooperation with the Eurasia Regional Office with the Ukrainian NSO, it launched a crowdfunding campaign on the Scout Donation platform, a special website for that. And it happened really 2 days after the start, so it was a very quick response, very good reaction. And by now, more than $400,000 were raised. And these donations will support the Ukrainian NSO in its work on site, but also this money will go to NSOs of the neighboring countries, those countries also affected by the amount of refugees, like Poland, like Romania, like Moldova and others, so that it will help them provide better supplies, better logistics, volunteers, etc. So Also, part of this money is being allocated to provide psychological support. That's something, right, we discussed before as well. Some mental health services for young people, for children as well. And as you mentioned, apart from that, it is true, it's another piece of news that was out just today, to be honest. So yeah, apart from WASM launching the campaign, there is also a cooperation of World Scouting with UNICEF to support children, to support families fleeing the conflict, fleeing the war in Ukraine, and it will also help even more people who are in need. So that's another area, another partnership that will help provide better support in this situation. Coming back also to the Scout donation platform, by the way, as I said, yeah, it was really quick. I think it was the quickest response and also the fastest growing appeal on the Scout donation platform in the whole history of it. And though it is not really the first emergency crisis situation that the world and Scouting is dealing with, but again, as Scouts, as I said before, we constantly learn, we constantly develop, and this is another situation to learn from and to make sure that World Scouting stays alert, stays agile and resilient when it comes to dealing with crisis situations, and whether these are wars or natural disasters or something else.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And it was not the first for WASM to come in the aid of humanity for the purpose of, supporting those we can and alleviating, the difficult circumstances people are, especially in this disaster, be it natural, man-made. And but it's very interesting how the world acted together, especially the Scouting world acted together. And this was the fastest and by far the highest impact that we've seen. Now coming here to the ground, Scouts in the US are geographically far from the refugee crisis in Ukraine. What is one thing that you want Scouts in America to know about what is going on? I mean, what is it, especially Radu, if you take it first, what is the one message you want to send to Scouts who are very far away, world away, and who see these things only on media, on news? What would you like to share?
I'd want Scouts in America to know that no matter the problem in the world, if we come together and show support, we can overcome it and surpass the difficulties we face. We should always be available to help, no matter how little, because it adds up and we are many.
Yeah.
So in the end, it really shows.
That is true.
The steps we should all take would be to become informed and to inform others about the ways we could get involved and help those who are less fortunate, and then actually get involved and help whatever we can.
Yes. And when we talk about let us do our best, let us, do what we can, the next question most young people would have would be, what steps can they take to show their support, their solidarity in promoting of, peace, peace building and dialogue? What steps would you advise young Scouts in America to take?
Well, they could maybe try and push their parents a little more, because I don't know how it is there, but in my country, young people don't have that much power yet. And the most power young people have is to convince their parents about the ideas they believe in, and using this adult to leverage, maybe something is going to change, because many adults hear about things on the news and there appears this sort of a veil on what's happening.
Yeah.
So you can be really in touch with reality, and TV destroys a lot of important detail.
Yes.
So Scouts being there in the action can maybe tell a more emotional story, like maybe, I don't know, really convince the parents.
Yes.
Because I believe parents would be more inclined to listen to their children because they are closer to them.
Well, as a father of 4 children, I tell you, my children teach me so much about the world every day because of, you know, social media, because of the access to talking to each other. Young people communicate a lot more than my generation did when I was young. We did not talk to people from other cultures, from other countries as we do now. So I think young people talking to their parents and sharing the human story, as you said, telling the story, not just what we see on the news, on the media, but what we hear from each other as scouts talking with scouts, scouts working with each other. I think it would definitely make a major impact. I know as a parent, my children influence me and kind of convince me on doing things than, you know, the media would. So you're absolutely right. Nika, let me come back to you with one question, and I want Radu as well to address it. We've been saying scouts from around the world have already come together to provide assistance where they can. Has being part of the World Scouting community being helpful in your efforts, in the work that you both do? Being part of that global brotherhood, sisterhood, has it been helpful, Nika?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, again, I would like to come back again to the impact of the Scout Donation platform as a really main fundraising source for the Ukrainian NSO and the neighboring countries. WASM is working directly with NOSU, National Organization of the Scouts of Ukraine, Ukrainian NSO, and also staff volunteers in the region to ensure this coordinated response, right? That's what we said, what is important, to coordinate all our efforts through fundraising, through logistical support, through resources, etc. And also the scouts, NOSU leadership, the Ukrainian NSO leadership is obviously in touch with all the scout groups, with the parents, and the role of this global communication here is very important because lots of families, lots of young people are moving outside Ukraine or to different cities, and scouts, that's their primary contact to help. And they know that wherever they go, they can always ask for support and for help as the scouts, because we are this one global family, and that is unique. That is what very important. There is always this way to connect with scouts abroad, and they will help. And that's what we've been seeing since the very beginning of this, that this tremendous support is really there. And again, it's not only about humanitarian help, about the support on site or the support of this new Scouts communities to where you come if you move. That's also support through social media, because again, in our modern times where social media is playing a key role in addressing different crises, supportive email, supporting Instagram, Facebook messages, they come from every corner of the world, postcards and Cub Scouts drawing pictures and promoting peace and supporting dialogue. It's also, a lot of tags in Instagram stories and posts and all these words of support. It is all being read by Ukrainian scouts. More or less everyone has access to internet if you're not really into a very bad situation in one of those few cities for now, fortunately. But more or less everyone has access to the internet, and these words of support, these messages are being read. And in this situation, every kind word matters. And I know that every Ukrainian scout really feels now more than ever that they are part of this big World Scout family, and they can count on this support.
Wow, that's such heartwarming, personal reflection and what is really happening in that, because I feel the same way wherever I go. When I see Scouts uniform or I speak to somebody and they tell me they're a Scout, I automatically feel like I'm safe. I am with my own, So that's very powerful. Radu, please go ahead.
I would agree with Nika in everything that she said. And besides all the financial and emotional and social media support we've got so far. I think another very important part of being part of a community like Scouting is that we know we aren't alone, and it's like a very big and friendly friend that has your back. So even if you are the only scout in your local group or whatever, that goes to hope, you know, you represent this big community of people and this big image and this big family that they are with you, even though not physically.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Radu. And I think when the founder started Scouting, that was the whole concept. It is about creating that oneness, that unity. And you used a beautiful expression, somebody got your back. And when somebody got your back, you don't have to worry about what's happening to you or what's going to happen because you're by yourself, but you know that you have a lot of people that are supporting you. And that's beautiful. I think we all know about the Messengers of Peace. The World Scout organization has a Messengers of Peace program, which incorporates the Messengers of Peace initiative, the Messengers of Peace network, and the program itself, which has the projects. We also have Dialogue for Peace and the Better World framework. Now that we have spoken about, in depth about global scouting, being that, member of the global movement, and the global scouting response as well that has been seen on the crisis in Ukraine, how do you think scouts can continue to act as messengers of peace once this crisis abates, to the millions of others around the globe who are displaced and living through trauma of war, conflict, natural disasters, extreme poverty? Like, how can we as scouts globally, we are 57 million plus of us, how can we continue being the messengers of peace? Radu, you want to take first?
Sure. Well, first of all, keeping in mind that the response to the Ukraine crisis was so fast and so widespread and overall awesome, I think scouts around the world could begin to treat each of these problems you mentioned earlier as urgent as the Ukraine crisis was and still is, and unite, raise awareness and funds and support people who are facing those as strongly as they did in this situation.
Thank you so much, Radu. Nika?
Yeah, I can only add that, as we say in scouting, that every scout is a messenger of peace. And that's because we all made this promise that includes a personal commitment towards peace. And as scouts, we're all active citizens. We're all willing to play and playing already a constructive role in building this culture of peace and dialogue in our societies. And it can be really a small action or a large service, community service project, but the goal remains the same, right? It's to make the world a better place. And as scouts already, there are so many things that we are doing. We advocate for peace by engaging in discussions and decision-making processes. We respond to natural disasters or to other crisis situations when they happen. We help refugees, like what we are seeing now as well, organizing events, creating safe space for them, creating a new home for them. We also stand up for equality, for inclusion. We promote diversity. We make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and they are alone, that's 17 different areas to take action. So it's all about making this step, about making this good deed. It can be a small one or a big one. It depends, and they all are equally important for this. And as you mentioned as well, Dr. Davis, apart from Messengers of Peace, there is also this Dialogue for Peace program that inspires scouts, incorporate dialogue into their everyday lives and to get this mutual understanding, to learn about different identities, about differences in between people. That's something enriching and not something bad. And these two and all the other different opportunities in scouting, they all encourage scouts to acquire this knowledge, to acquire skills and develop competencies in all these different areas, so that we can all apply them not only in scouting but also in our everyday lives, right? So and the current situation with Ukraine is one of those examples of how unexpectedly you might need these skills and this knowledge. So that's definitely, yes, something that scouting gives us, this unique environment of learning and practice.
You're absolutely right. And we always say, especially those of us involved in World Scouting, the most important actions happen at the grassroots level, where groups gather and do the work. And I think each and every one of us has that role to play as messengers of peace. Nika, I have a follow-up question. There have been and will continue to be other humanitarian crises around the world, whether caused by war, natural disasters, persecution, economic hardship. How do you think scouting can make more actions, take more actions to prepare our response for such events?
Yeah, I think really it's learning by doing. Again, scouting has this long and proud history of promoting peace, promoting dialogue, human rights all over the world. And yeah, particularly in the areas where conflict or emergency crisis arises. And scouting should and will continue helping young people and also adults as well in scouting, just to build this capacity. As I said earlier at some point, that's through scouting's youth program that young people learn the skills that are really invaluable in humanitarian crisis settings. And both, we are talking about practical skills like setting up shelters or cooking, some with minimal supplies outdoors, but also some soft skills like teamwork or dialogue or spirit, of giving, etc. And be prepared. That's not really only words, but it's what scouting is about, to be prepared, meaning to have the knowledge, to have the skills, and also willingness to act. And I think it is important to understand this value of scouting and to be willing to join the movement and to develop yourself in the movement, not only because you like spending time outdoors in a tent with friends, but also this element is very important. Obviously, depending on the age of young people, of children, you might not understand that, but as an adult especially, the role of making sure young people also develop themselves, educate themselves, and they gain these needed skills in this safe environment in scouting, that's what matters. And that's again what makes this movement unique.
Wow, yes. Our motto, be prepared, is an everyday thing. It's something we continue to do. Radu, current events, affect not just the adults, not just the organization, but people of all ages. Now, going to the local level, be it in the United States, be it anywhere else in the world, how do you think Scout leaders should address these difficult matters? Is it important for the leaders to be proactive, or is it better for them to wait for the young people to come and ask them questions?
Well, actually, I think it's a mixture of both. That is the ideal. I believe creating a base and a plan in the beginning is more than required and very important, so that we are not caught empty-handed in an urgent situation. But as the situation progresses, Scout leaders should be more than eager to listen to the questions and ideas of Scouts of all ages. Treat them all with the same respect and be ready to learn from them, as you mentioned you do from your children, and I hope all the Scout leaders, adult leaders do. And I think young people's minds are an endless creative resource we should all embrace and nourish, and dedicate our time to provide for them and be like open and enlarge our ears to everything they have to say, because I believe there's meaning in everything everyone says. They have a reason behind it.
Yeah, that's very powerful. That's something, active listening is something we all need to work on, because listening to respond is not the same as active listening and listening to understand. So I think all of us need to do that and encourage young people to come up with those questions. I really like what you said, Radu. Nika, would you like to add something on that, please?
I actually cannot agree more with Radu. Yeah, I think as well it should be a combination of the two, and it really depends, of course, on the situation. If it is something easily brought by the Scouts, and also it is a lot about how safe, how they feel in the Scout group, in the patrol, right, in the unit. Because again, from my experience in the Ukrainian Scout groups, it's always the process that when you start developing this culture of sharing, of discussing this delicate topics, delicate issues, and the more you do it, the more open-minded you feel, the more safe you feel in this environment. So at some point it can be the adults, the leaders starting a discussion, making young people think, or it can be at some point we get to the point when it's vice versa. And as you said, Dr. Davis, that you're learning a lot from your kids, and it's the same in Scouting. I always believe that it's a mutual learning, and young people can bring a lot to the group, to the discussion, and make adults, make leaders learn from them as well.
Yeah. Well, I really thank both of you for such a wonderful panel of discussions that we had. I think we have addressed several important points. But my last question would be, do you have any last words that you want to share with Scouts, especially within the Boy Scouts of America, Scouts in the US, and Scouts around the world as well, that you would like to share, give them as an advice, from our current learnings? Nika, let me go with you first.
Yeah, I would just say I would like to encourage everyone to take action, and say that taking action is just a matter of decision. Again, not talking specifically about the current situation in Ukraine, but in general, as Scouts, we know that every single step matters to the goal, to a brighter tomorrow, to a better world, to a more active citizenship. As you don't really plant a forest in one day, right? So you start with this little seed. So I just want to encourage everyone who is listening to find this inspiration today and join us in our effort to bring changes to ourselves, to our communities around us, to make our local groups, to make our little communities, regional communities, our countries, our regions, and the whole world a little better. Again, as Baden-Powell said, to leave this world a little better than you found it. And that's what he really wanted. And that's the goal of every Scout in World Scouting. So I would like to, again, bring this inspiration or share a bit of my inspiration with all of you.
Thank you so much. That's very profound. Radu?
I actually thought about something similar, and that is never miss an opportunity to get involved. And you never know how it's going to change you and also the people you are helping. And even if you do not yet feel prepared, be trusting that one day, by taking enough action and helping how much you can, you will one day become prepared. And so you could use the motto and to inspire other people.
Wow, yes, never miss an opportunity to help, to do the right thing. This is very powerful. And I think taking what you both said, never miss the opportunity. Make sure you do one step at a time. You cannot do everything at once. And it's very key to use the right channels. I know we get emotional sometimes. We want to do so much. We want to serve. But if we go, sending the money or sending the thing here, doing that, if we don't coordinate it, it might fall into the wrong hands, and it will not do that impact you want to see. It won't do that help that you want it to do. So I think it is very important for us to kind of channel our efforts, work together collectively within our NSOs, within the world movement, and take it one step at a time and make that difference of creating a better world. Thank you so much to both of you, and I really appreciate everyone for this opportunity. And I'll end our panel discussion here. Thank you so much.